I'm Donald Bell for Cool Tools, and in this video I'm going to reel off some of the most interesting tools I've found this year that are under $10. Some of these are relatively new to the market, and some of them have been around for a while, but were just off my radar. First up, the CANARY cardboard cutter. Cardboard is an abundant resource for making crafts and mocking up design ideas. It's especially great for kids. Unfortunately, one of the most common tools for working with cardboard is a box cutter knife, which is a dangerous tool for anyone of any age, but it's also really not a great tool for shaping cardboard. It cuts the stuff, but there's not really much nuance with it. The CANARY cardboard cutter is a much more satisfying way to cut and shape cardboard. It has a finely serrated edge on both sides and a blunt tip. The edge could cut you if you saw it into yourself, but it's unlikely to cut you just from casual handling. But when this thing comes into contact with corrugated cardboard, you can work through it like butter. Even without a pointy tip, you can easily work your way into any spot just by starting with the side of the blade and then pushing in. It works against the corrugation or with it, and unlike scissors, it doesn't pinch the material at all, so you can make these long swooping cuts with ease. But what this does better than any other tool I've used is kerfing, which is to make a flexible joint on a material with a series of incomplete cuts. Using light pressure, you can get a consistent kerf cut for making hinges or tubes in cardboard designs. As a bonus, I've had equally great results using this knife on foam core, without any of the bunching you'll sometimes get with a box cutter or an X-Acto blade. Best of all, it's just $8. If nothing else, it's a great, relatively safe tool for breaking down cardboard boxes for recycling. Next, we have FiberFix. This stuff is sold as a single-use roll and pitched as a kind of super tape that can mend broken tool handles or attach the muffler back onto your car. Using the included gloves, you soak the roll in water for a few seconds, wrap it around the thing you're fixing, and after a 10-minute setup time, it's supposed to stick everything together and become hard as steel. Sort of like an all-in-one fiberglass resin wrap. Sounds cool, but I really had to rack my brain thinking of something to use it on. I'm hoping it can help me with my go-kart handlebar, which is this mashup of bike parts that tends to slip out of alignment. By wrapping it up, I'm hoping it will seize together and maybe even look cooler. A little piece of sandpaper is included to rough up the surface, which helps it stick. Gloves are also included because apparently this resin here is no fun if it sticks to your skin. I soak it in water for 5 seconds and then quickly wrap what I'm trying to fix before it sets. After it's wrapped, it's recommended that you wrap it again with this included vinyl strap just to keep pressure on while it sets up. Here it is after 15 minutes. It's hard like the outside of a cast, and you can sand it or paint it. But unlike a cast where your arm can kind of still slip around, the resin in here sticks hard to what you've wrapped it on. Supposedly it's watertight. I can at least vouch for it being tough. The big downside as I see it is that it's a one-shot deal. As soon as you open the bag, moisture, even just from the air, is enough to begin the curing process. You can cut it and use as much or as little as you want, but there's no saving the rest for later. That said, for $8, it's one of those tools that's probably good to have on hand as part of an emergency kit. Next, we have these non-stick coated medical shears. These are standard issue EMT scissors. They're purposely blunt so you don't stab people as you're trying to help them. In the field, these are used for cutting away clothes and belts and seatbelts and bandages, anything you can think of. They're tough and strong and cheap enough that you don't have to be precious with them. These are sometimes called penny cutters because yes, they can cut through pennies. You'll never need to, but it's an impressive demo. Another feature most models share is this lip on the front. This is great for slipping into a tight spot without having to jab the pointy end first. These particular shears stand out from the super cheap ones in two ways. First, the matte black finish on here is a non-stick fluoride coating. It helps from getting gummed up, especially when cutting through tape. Second, and probably most useful to makers, there's a dull notch back here that's perfect for stripping wire. Because of the non-stick coating, people will often pick these up for gardening. I've also seen them used as kitchen scissors. These things can be autoclaved or boiled or run through the dishwasher to kill off any bacteria, and the channels in the blades help to flush out any gunk. Next on the list, gear ties. These are essentially giant twist ties. There's a bendable metal wire inside and the outside is made from a waterproof, UV-resistant rubber. Just like you'll usually see twist ties used to bundle together produce or secure products in a package, these are great for wrapping things together. They're great for wrapping cords together. They can be used to hold together a bedroll or a rolled up yoga mat. You want to secure a GoPro to a pole? You can do that. You want to make a makeshift mount for your phone? You can do that. Make a stand for your flashlight? No problem. It's just a great, generally handy thing to have around. Great for camping or traveling. A lot of reviewers recommend them for tying things down on boats or kayaks or just generally rigging things together temporarily. And one tip from my own experience is that you can very simply twist these together to double the length. The ribbed, gummy quality of the rubber sticks to itself pretty well. For electronic work, next on the list is this $9 USB soldering iron. It has a 5-foot long cord with a mini jack on one end and USB on the other. All connected, powered from my MacBook. It takes around 15 seconds to get to a useful temperature. A button on the handle activates it, and if your finger is off the button for more than 15 seconds, it shuts off for safety. Battery life really depends on what you have it plugged into, but this and a rechargeable USB battery pack will probably get you a long way. Next up, a pocket-sized diamond whetstone. You can see from the packaging here that this is intended for sharpening the edges of skis or snowboards. I can't speak to that, but I can tell you that it is a great, compact, and durable file for all kinds of applications. The manufacturer, DMT, does most of their business selling larger diamond whetstones for sharpening knives and tools. This is that same product, but on a smaller scale. The face of the file has this polka dot pattern. The red is from the plastic backing showing through. Those holes are just slightly recessed and provide a place for little bits to collect as you file things down. The color is also there to indicate which grit you're working with. This red one is considered fine, around 600 grit, if I understand it right. Now the metal part is where the magic is. You can't tell from looking at it, but there's a layer of industrial diamonds embedded in the metal surface. The metal is actually electroformed around the diamonds, so it holds up to repeated use. The back is just plastic, stamped by the manufacturer and showing that this is made in Marlborough, Massachusetts. Because the diamonds are so incredibly hard, they work as an abrasive on just about anything. You can file your fingernails, sharpen small metal tools, knives, and generally just knock the edges off anything you throw at it. It can be used wet or dry. And because it's not all stabby like a traditional metal file, you can travel with this without raising any eyebrows with the TSA. Plus, how cool is it to have a tool made of diamonds? For something super cheap, how about this non-drip metallic Sharpie? Now, if I'm marking wood, I'll use a pencil. For everything else, I'll typically go with my trusty black Sharpie. But both options fall short when you're marking something that's dark. With the metallic Sharpie, you can permanently write on even the darkest, glossiest surface and be able to read the mark. Black plastic, dark metal, dark fabric, rubber, black gaffer tape, beer bottles, and it's a great way to label black plastic wall warts so you can remember what goes to what. They're cheap, high contrast, permanent, there's no shaking or dripping, and it's just a cool look. Next up, Beadle Wraps. So I came across this stuff at my local hardware store, figuring maybe it was some common thing that I just didn't know about, and maybe it is, but I cannot find more than a single video about this stuff online, so I figured I'd at least right that wrong here. Think of this as a cross between a zip tie and a Velcro or hook and loop strap. It's cheap and plastic like a zip tie, but easy to reuse like Velcro, but it's also kind of its own thing. So let's say you've got a cord to tie up. You wrap it around, thread it through the bottom hole, and then when you're going back through the top hole, you get a loop that you can use to hang this whole thing up. If you have multiple cords to bundle together, you can use that second loop to wrap the other cable. Depending on the cord you're wrapping, you could also wrap just one notch on the cord directly onto the cord to keep it there, and then use the other notch for wrapping the entire bundle. This helps keep the wrap with the cord when you undo it. If you have something big to wrap and need a longer cord, you can chain these together until you get the size you need. They also just sell bigger and smaller versions of these if you already know what kind of job you want them to handle. Best of all, these come undone with just a little gentle encouragement. I feel they're easier to undo than reusable zip ties, but not so easy that you have to worry about them falling apart. Compared to a hook and loop strap, the hook and loop looks nicer and is more intuitive to manage, but these aren't cheap, and you don't get the built-in loop for hanging. I'm not saying they're perfect, but I'm glad to have them around, and they're cheap. Next is this $7 BabeBot glue bottle made by FastCap. It's a 4-ounce plastic bottle made for glue. I've got mine filled with wood glue. They also make a bigger 16-ounce version called the GlueBot, but I personally find this little one a little more handy. What this does is make laying down glue a much tidier and more exact process. The way it does this is that the design feeds glue up from the bottom through a spout, sort of like a fancy tea kettle. And when you're done squeezing out the glue, you get this immediate back pressure that sucks the glue right back into the bottle, so you don't get that messy string of glue drool. There's also a little cap here that stays attached and keeps the glue from drying out, and the whole thing makes me feel like a glue master. For something both fun and useful, next on the list is a pocket microscope. I half bought this thing just to see what a tiny $6 microscope even looks like. It comes in this flimsy box, and understandably it's mostly plastic, but what you get is fairly impressive. The microscope itself is just this passive lens system that you can focus with your hand, but you also get this series of LEDs that you can switch on to add extra light. Switched one way, you can look at things under a UV light, which is apparently handy for seeing anti-counterfeit marks on money. I had microscopes as a kid, but they were always this classic style where you had to put samples on a slide and they were more or less fixed things. What surprised me about this cheap, tiny microscope is how much fun it can be just to take it to anything out in the world. The wood grain on a table, the tread of a bike tire, the print in a comic book, all of these hidden worlds open up and you can just instantly peek at them. If you have kids, it's a slam dunk. Even if they already have a standard microscope like my kid, the reaction to this was totally different. Beyond the novelty, I found this to be useful a few times for inspecting electronics projects and troubleshooting connections, or reading little component values or serial numbers. And I should also mention that I was able to use this with my smartphone camera to take close-up photos or videos. That's actually how I shot a lot of this video here. So you can somewhat think of this as a super macro lens adapter for your phone. So those are my top picks for under $10. You can find links to all of these tools in the video description here, and you can see thousands of reader recommended tools like this at cool-tools.org.